Is your dream life waiting for your plan? Chaz and I give you the framework for a successful 2025. Grab your pens. Let's dive in.
Boom, shakalaka.
First podcast of 2025, Chaz.
You know, I was thinking we've been doing this for a minute and it feels like a lot longer than we have. Just finished up our third year, 22, 23, 24. About to, I guess technically in February, it'll be the end of the third year, but feels like we've been podcasting for a long time.
Yeah, you're a grizzled veteran. Like we'll release episode 500 here in a couple of in February.
Yeah. Yeah, crazy and amazing.
Yeah,
All at the same time.
500 episodes in 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, something to be proud of. When you said chiseled or grizzled, well, I don't know what you said, but it made me think of all the grays that have come into my beard. Has it been because of all the podcasts?
You've talked with a lot of people. You've met a lot of really interesting people. You've also met some people where you're like, how are you succeeding in life?
Some of those conversations are my favorite. I had one of these conversations the other day. I don't know if you're listening right now, if you would relate to this, but there's been several moments in my life where, someone is on stage of sorts. And I'm like, I like scratch my head and you have whatever business it is, whatever success, whatever achievement. And there's a part of me that's like super happy because I don't really have like oh, they're successful, so I need to hate them, or because they were successful, I can't be, nothing like that. But there are times where I'm like, how? And then immediately it switches to, okay, if you can do that,
so much hope.
There's so much hope. But then I think the third element to that is a very quick, like humbling, okay, so if they've experienced something that I haven't yet, then what do I think that I have that I don't?
It's good.
Like a whole like trifecta of emotions. So always good to see someone succeeding, especially one that you think possibly that you're maybe more skilled or qualified, and it's a good humbling experience.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's exciting. Those environments are always exciting for me. Maybe it's because I have more self-confidence or I'm just arrogant. I'm not really sure which one it is, but I love those experiences.
Yeah, it's like I was talking to somebody. Well, we had a guest, the golf expert, and golf. I haven't played in many years because as soon as when I picked it up for the first time, it was not easy, but like I was having fun. But then as soon as I started, just the second that I thought I had it, and I immediately became pissed and I couldn't handle it anymore. And Eric, the guy I was just referring to, he was just like, yeah, dude, it's the ultimate humbler, But that's how I feel about success, like if there are people doing it, there are people winning at things. And it's like, man, okay, I've got some work to do, apparently. Somewhere, somehow, you've got something that I don't, or potentially they just got lucky, which does happen, the right time, right place. Okay, fine. And so I don't try to like hold my candle to theirs necessarily, but it does give me hope, like you said, just like, okay, well, if they can do it, I can do it.
The other side of that is it's kind of a razor's edge, right? We've interviewed a couple of people on this podcast that had huge businesses that now have nothing because of bad decisions or market environment or whatever it is, that have, gone from hero to zero very quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had a few of those where we've had to, remove them off the channel because people that have been hurt were reaching out and saying, hey, this is not cool that this person's up here talking about success, and it doesn't work like that. So yeah, you're right, because it can come and go if right things, systems, people, and I think that at least for the few that I'm thinking of, it's not like they were malicious or bad people.
Right.
They had probably in both circumstances I can think of, they just grew too fast, and so there's that kind of newer entrepreneur that, and I think I probably did it too, when I went from 0 to 7 locations of edible arrangements in 4 years in my 20s. And and it felt a lot of times like the train was off the track, and
Yeah.
pulling out my hair. And really the only thing, I was telling Julie this actually too, really the only thing in those moments that, the problem that those folks created, the problem that I created can only be sustained by money because you've dug yourself into a hole, most likely because you've grown and just mismanaged it. But really the key factor is time, because money, you can make the money over a long enough period of time. And so really it's the ability to hang in there and just hang on and hang tight, because if you don't if it doesn't take you out, as long as you keep going and taking, steps towards the thing, all it really is time. Even if you amount yourself in this huge amount of debt, as long as the business is viable, and you take concerted efforts to like make and correct things, make changes and correct things, and continue to drive forward, but in a way that's different than how you got into the mess. It just is time. That's the only factor. As long as you have enough time, you can get out of it. And I think that you've seen that, and a lot of times we don't even hear about some of these big issues because they figured it out, and they got to figure out the money thing, but it's just a time thing. So some people are able to figure it out faster, and if you don't, you gotta be able to hang on, and make the changes inside the business in order to be able to hang on.
Yeah. You don't have to experience what you're talking about and have poor money management skills. I remember I did a pre-interview for one of our guests who was running a SaaS product, and his like third contract, he hit big with a government agency, and he had to scale his business from himself, his home garage, to 75 employees in order to fulfill this contract in the matter of 2 months.
Yeah,
And you just don't realize what type of cash success takes to build.
yeah, yeah. Because you've got this, huge contract in front of you. It's payday. It's also like a wow, like here's my moment, here's my opportunity. Last thing you want to do is turn it down. And I probably thought that too. I can remember, coming across, different entrepreneurs along the way in my earlier years who I would watch, for in essence, turn things down, turn opportunities down, turn jobs down, turn, contracts, projects, whatever you want to say. And it's like, because what I learned back then, certain gurus, is just like, no, you say yes, figure out the rest later. And there's an element to that that's true. And I think that I still live my life by a lot of that. But prudence has to be part of the equation, you know? I don't know if it was prudent for that guy because I don't remember the exact situation, but to go hire 75 people in 60 days is nuts. You know, I can't imagine that the attrition was great. And so now you just
Oh,
have chaos. You
yeah.
can't imagine completing anything for your client at all, let alone with any sort of excellence.
Yeah. 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 I was having this conversation with an employee of ours who had, or not an employee of ours, a client of ours who's looking to grow in some substantial ways in the next year. And he's like, I need to hire 60 people in the next year. I was like, bro, if you need to hire 60 people in the next year, your first hire is like a full time person that's going to onboard people. You need a full time recruiter. And your target isn't 60, your target is probably 90. You need to hire 90 people in the next year with the understanding that you're going to lose about a third of them if you don't get the system of onboarding set up right. If you just throw them in for self preservation because you're growing quickly and don't give them the tools to be successful when they start,
Yeah.
it's just a matter of time before they leave.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's a great approach that you took with him, right? Like it's not don't do the contract, and maybe or whatever they're doing to plan for growth, but and maybe they shouldn't, but let's say assume, yeah, we are going to grow like that. We are going to have to do this. We are going to take the contract or the project, whatever. Okay, fine. Let's use some wisdom here and some prudence, some decision making, and go, okay, let's not just, because this is what entrepreneurs do. We just skimp. We just go, it'll be, I'm gonna hire 60 people. Great. There's like a map to that, and I think the reverse engineering it down to like, okay, well, what actually needs to happen? And in order for that to happen, what has to happen? In order for that to happen, what has to be true? And there's just a lot of building blocks that make that either successful or very, very not successful very, very quickly.
Yeah. This planning that we're talking about, this roadmap, or being prudent around some decision making. It's kind of what I want to talk about here today. I know that we've done a little reminiscing, but it's the end of 2024 as we're recording this. This episode will be released the beginning of 2025. Would love to talk about what annual planning looks like. How does an entrepreneur set themselves up for success now for next year?
Yeah. And I think that, for folks that are maybe just hearing this type of language for the first time, I hope that you take what Jake and I are going to give to you back and forth here and actually take action on it. I think you've got some stats around, less than 3% of people that set goals actually write them
Right goals.
down. And,
Yep.
like 95% of the people that write them down never do it, never even pull it out of the drawer or something crazy. And so the action is, of course, listening and then writing some stuff down, but then taking action and tracking and continuing to take action. And we'll get to that here in a minute. But the reason why I want to say that that's kind of step one is that you've got to take action. Okay, fine. But for me, and probably for you too, and many of our other members of GTK, what makes it so much easier for us to be able to see success is because we get ourselves in a room where there's other people doing the same stuff. And I know that Jake's got goals and he's got them written down and he's reading them out loud every morning. Okay, great. I should too. And that community aspect of yearly planning or anything that we're talking about is just so much easier with not just accountability, but with association, right? The people that are around you and what they're doing, what they're excited about, and the energy that they're bringing is just so important. We know this, we talk about it, but then, listener right now, who's around you? And if you don't have people around you that are talking like this and your outlet is a podcast, like cool, that's good. That's better than not, but you need people in your actual life. We just had a guy sign up for GTK just a couple weeks ago. He's been listening to the podcast for a couple years. And he's like, I decided that I needed to be off the sideline and I needed to be in the game. And so he went to the website, gatheringthekings.com, booked appointment. And he was so shocked because he was like, dude, I had to wait like 3 weeks to meet you. Like, yeah, man. I mean, first off, this thing's really curated, right? Like I'm very particular on who's on the inside because I see it through the lens that I'm talking about. Like this is my circle too. It's not like just a group that I've got and like I make the money and then I've got other people. Now this is my group too. Like this is my community too. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting value. So I want to make sure that there's amazing people who also can hold their own. It's called Gathering the Kings for a reason because I didn't want other people to be my students. I wanted members to come to the table and bring value, bring ideas, bring energy, bring momentum, because that stuff is contagious. And so all that in a container of annual planning, cool. Listening to the podcast, great. We're going to give you some good stuff. But make sure that you're around people. And if you don't have people, go to gatheringthekings.com, fill out an application. I'd be personally meeting with you and I'd be happy to chat with you, see if it's a good fit. Don't know if it will be, but we'll talk about it. Okay. You need people around you, whether it's us or someone else, period. End of story. Like there's not like, well, I can do it on my own. No, I did that for many years and I was successful, quote unquote. But when I look back, now knowing and understanding the power of community and the power of people around me and association and accountability, I was not nearly the success that I could have been if I had had people around me, period. All right. So an annual planning. It's a zoomed out look, right, Jake? We talked about this yesterday briefly.
Yes.
And when I say zoomed out, what does that mean to you?
It means that you're picking your head up and you're not looking necessarily at the day to day or week to week or what you're accomplishing this month, but really we're looking at what needs to happen over the course of the next 12, 14, 16 months in our business and how can we strategically start putting pieces in place today.
Yeah. So we got to pull our head out of the sand, out of the current day to day. Now, most business owners typically don't have a problem pulling their heads out of the day to day. They need to probably put their head into the day to day. Get down in the, not necessarily into the nitty gritty of their business, but at least to be able to understand it so that they can, create a roadmap. But and so we're kind of dealing with kind of two different versions here, right? You got somebody that maybe thinks more naturally in the future, and then you got somebody who maybe thinks more naturally in the present. Okay, great. So if you're one of the folks that thinks more naturally in the future, this zoomed out look is going to be just kind of naturally how you think anyway. For the folks that are more present minded, you're going to have to probably work at what does it mean to zoom out. And so I had given actually somebody on this other call, we were just doing this kind of word picture. And when I say zoom out, like go ahead and close your eyes and just imagine yourself like rising up, out of your seat, up above your house, into the sky, and high enough to where you're starting to get a little nervous, right? You see the neighborhood that you're in, or you start to see the school and the convenience store down the road, and now you can see the whole city that you're in. Maybe go up a little bit more, you see the whole metro and just land. If some of you guys are like Kansas City, if you get up high enough, like there's farm ground and cows. So I got this zoomed out thing. I can see the whole thing, right? I'm not zoomed in on one particular place like my desk, right? Or my computer screen. I'm up above and I can kind of see the whole picture. That's what we want you to do for this next year, for 2025. Just go up. Think about January, February, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. And we're December of 2025 now. And I want you to write some things down that are true, right? They're not true right this minute, but they're true a year from now where you are in your mind. Okay. We're writing down things that are true about our business. We're writing down things that are true about our family, our marriage. And you can be really, really practical here. Like what I would write down is that, because like right now I'm 37, I would write down that I'm 38. Like that's true. I'm going to be 38 December of 2025. Some of that is good for your brain because what we're going to be doing is building a belief around what is going to happen in the next year. So I need to put some elements down that I know that my subconscious won't argue with me that it's true. Right? I'm going to be 38. I'm going to have been married 17 years. I'm going to have 4 children. Not having any more, at least not that I'm aware of. Okay. I'm going to be operating these businesses. Right. So I want you to write down some actual truths. Okay. Now we're going to write down some things that will be true. Maybe they're not true today, or we don't know for sure that they're going to be true, but we're planning for them, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay. And that might be a certain revenue in your business. That might be a certain amount of team members on your team. That might be, maybe a certain feeling that you have about your marriage. Maybe right now you feel a little strained or stressed, maybe even broken, but by December 2025, you want it to feel whole. You want it to feel connected or renewed. Okay. You can write down for that about your kids. You can write down thoughts around your health, around your faith. And the last category that we use is lifestyle, the things that bring you joy. What are the things that are true in December of 2025 where you get joy? And so as you're thinking about those things, you can live in this place for a minute. And I want you to dream, but I want you to take a look at the things that you wrote down. And if you need to pause the podcast, great. Fill out your list a little bit more. But I want you to take a look at the list that you've created. And I want you to understand or think through a filter of, can I get this done in 12 months? Because that's what we're dealing with, right? So some entrepreneurs immediately go to, like, when they think of future planning, whatever, they think, I'm going to double my business. I'm going to, fill in the blank, right? And if you can double your business this year, go for it. I'm not saying don't do that. And I'm not saying lower any targets. What I am saying, though, is that most entrepreneurs, when they think about their annual plan, they're probably thinking about a 3-year picture, right? We go to that dream state pretty easily. Yeah. And if you're on the present thinking side, maybe you don't go to the dream state as easily, and you're wondering if what's going to happen next week, and it's hard to think about the year. And so you might have to expand that out a little bit. But for the entrepreneurs that are kind of, thinking forward, you might be thinking in the 3-year picture. And you might need to dial some of these things back because you're going to be asking yourself, okay, in order for that to happen in December, in Q4, at the end of Q4, what's got to happen along the way? And we're going to reverse engineer those things back. Q3, Q2, Q1. We're going to go to Q1, month 3, month 2, month 1. Now we're back to January, which is just here in a few weeks. And in order for that to be true in December, and that means this has to happen in Q3, and this has to happen in Q2, and this has to happen in Q1. And in order for Q1 to be a check mark, this has to happen in January. Is that even possible? Okay. I'm going to pause here. Jake, why don't you chime in here and give some context or some color based on some of the things that you've done in this way?
Yeah. I think the first thing that I want to comment on is I love how you're talking about this zoomed out perspective, not only from business, but the other areas of life, and holistically trying to figure out what the picture looks like that you want to live in 12 months from now. Because sometimes we get so focused on the financial success or the metrics that we want inside of the business that other things in our life suffer because we're not focused on them.
Yeah.
And so setting goals and taking a look at planning what you want to do and accomplishing in these 5 dimensions of kingship that we call them is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. And I think that probably the biggest difference there for probably most people listening is that maybe they have never made those types of targets in their other areas of life. Or if they do, they're trying to become, we have a wheel that we use that kind of measures all these aspects of life: business and finance, family and marriage, health, which is mental and physical, faith, which is spiritual and self-confidence, and then lifestyle, the material and immaterial things that bring us joy. And you can grade yourself 0 to 10 on all of those. And it creates a little wheel and it shows you where you're off and all kinds of fun stuff. A lot of times people they haven't done that with themselves. So it's pretty eye opening to be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I'm really low in that area. But then the second thing is that, well, I'm going to be a 10 in all of them tomorrow. It's like, oh, okay. Why don't we take an approach of, okay, so if you're a 2 here and a 6 here and an 8 here, what would it look like to take this one to a 4, and this one to a 7, and that 8 to a 9, right? Well, like what's the next thing you got to do in your marriage or in your faith or in your lifestyle to bring you more joy? Okay. And rather than I'm gonna it's like the weight. I'm gonna be in the best shape ever this year. It's like, well, why don't we just define that a little bit? What does the best shape ever look like? Does it mean, that Jake, you lose 200 pounds this year? Could you lose 200 pounds this year? I know of some ways that you probably could, but is that what's going to happen in 2025? And then, so if it's not, then does that mean you're not winning? Well, no, no, you would absolutely be winning because you get to define what winning looks like. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
it's specifically around this topic, I just appreciate your friendship because you've mentioned it a couple of times on the podcast. I am on this health journey. I am trying to lose a lot of weight. You're trying to find the weight that I'm losing, and I'm trying to lose it. Yeah. But my expectation is that it happens today. Now, I started doing the thing. Why is it not happening? Why is, you know, and we had a conversation together, and you were like, what if it takes twice as long? Or what if you do half as much? Are you still in a better place today than you were yesterday? Just don't stop. Just don't stop doing the thing, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we get so frustrated that we're not seeing the results that we expect to see. And so we stop doing the thing because what's the point?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so many times when I talk with entrepreneurs then and they're like, "Oh, I goal set once." And I was like, "Well, once? What do you mean? What happened?" Like,
Yeah.
"Well, I didn't accomplish my goal, so I stopped goal setting."
Right.
And that to me is like that bag blowing in the wind, just aimlessly with no direction.
Yeah. Yeah. You said, I mean, this morning, so Jake and I worked out this morning and it was right about 5 a.m. And I looked at Jake and said, how you doing? How you feeling? You sleep okay? He's like, yeah. How you doing? Kind of threw up my shoulders and said, well, I'm here. And the truth is that I don't want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning or four something to be at the gym by 5. I don't, I don't really get excited about that. I just, I just kind of don't, and I'm okay to say that. But I've done that for a long time, and I'm in better shape than I was last year, and last year I was in better shape than the year before that. And look, you're talking about one of the most urgent individuals, in this world. Jake can attest. Like, I want everything done now, yesterday, actually. But sometimes when you can grasp what reality is, it gives you this confidence just to keep going. And I think keeping going is a way more powerful skill set as an entrepreneur than the hurry up push. Hurry up push is necessary, and I'm gonna hurry up push probably every day of my life, and and that's okay. But I think the staying power is actually better, right? And so I'm linking that back to the discipline of goal setting, not just to do it right now. We're at the top of the year. It's easy to think about, setting a weight goal and working out and eating better and all the things that you're going to set your goals for. But but what about in 2 weeks? What about in 2 months? What about in 7 months? You know, I had I've given up sugar. That was like 18, 19, 20 months ago. And I recently gave up caffeine. And my barber asked me the other day, I told him, yeah, he was cutting my hair and he's like, so are you still on that no caffeine thing? Are you gonna have one every once in a while? Because I was drinking early bird or nut on sugar energy drink or something. I was like, no, man, I made a decision. I made a decision that caffeine doesn't serve me. And so yeah, it's done. Like I'm not even considering it. It's just like I made the decision and it's over. He was like, man, that's great. I love that for you. I don't know if I can do that. It's like, well, of course you could, but it's the staying power. And for me, now I'm linking something is that staying power for me has just been so much easier when when I make the decision, that's it. I made the decision. I'm not going to waffle on it. I'm not going to be like, oh, well, one time, I'd have a nice little piece of cake or this, that, or the other. And I could totally have a piece of cake today and it would be just fine. It's not going to throw me out of any sort of mix. But for me, I made the decision that sugar doesn't serve me. So why would I eat it ever? I know that's kind of crazy and extreme, but for me, it's about the staying power. I'm just going to stay on this journey. I'm going to keep doing the things that have brought me the success that I'm looking for, not just in my body, but also in my business and also in my marriage. And, the 5 a.m. text message that I send to Julie, she probably, probably just likes it sometimes. I'm hoping every day it fills her cup, but maybe she just likes it sometimes because I sent another one. The staying power is powerful.
I agree 100%. And for someone that's listening and they hear Chaz talking about, well, I just made the decision that caffeine no longer serves me, so I'm not consuming it, and that seems extreme to you, it's because it is. And it's okay. It's okay for him to be extreme in his thought process around that. And it's also okay for you to maybe drink one Red Bull a week as opposed to the 5 you drank last week.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can be winning. It's not lowering the target. You're not comparing yourself, right? I'm not comparing
Right.
myself to you. You're not comparing yourself to me. We get to define our own targets, our own success. And I think that winning is the target. and winning for you is just going to look a little different than it is for me. Our workouts this morning looked different because winning for me and winning for you in our workouts today is just and that's okay. I think the concern there, as we're saying, hey, listener, it's okay if you X, is that you have to define that and you got to be honest. You got to be honest because you can't trick yourself. You can't. I mean, you could lie to yourself. I guess you could say, okay, fine, I'm going to do just one, but then eventually, then what? Right? Then does it go to 0? Does it go to whatever? Like you got to keep making progress. You got to keep making moves. It's like the other day I was, I think it was you and me and someone else, we were talking about, my early years of marriage and we've got an event coming up, the entrepreneur, kind of family entrepreneur event that we're doing. We're going to give people a blueprint for their business and their family. And I was reminiscing on some of my early years in marriage, how I was just all in on business, completely obsessed as I still am today. But back then I wasn't as obsessed, with with my family, with my marriage, with my health. And it's not like I was a bad husband. I mean, we had a good marriage. We weren't considering divorce or anything like that. We still much, spent time together, had great intimacy. Like, and there was nothing bad, quote unquote. But when I look back on it, it wasn't nearly where I needed to be, Chaz. And that was the detriment. I've had a couple people ask me since I've kind of been more vocal about this and be like, man, I knew you back then. Like, I mean, you put your kids down every night for bed, you pray, read the Bible. Like, you're a good dad. I'm like, I'm not saying I was a bad dad. I was a 2 on a scale of Chaz's 10. And that's the sad part, is that I stayed the 2 for too long. Right? I was a 10 in business, all in, but I wasn't a 10 in my marriage. Now, my 2 or my 4, maybe in comparison to, the average person, was better or something. I don't know, but I'm not saying that necessarily. For me, I don't compare. It was a 4, it was a 3, whatever whatever the scale was. And if it stays there, shame on me. That's not winning.
It's not growth.
It's not growth.
And I think we would both agree that regardless of how you define winning, growing needs to be a part of the definition. There needs to be progress. There needs to be forward movement. You need to be taking ground.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other grow.
Yeah, so back to this annual planning stuff. You're thinking about your 2025 year, right? And we're going to reverse engineer these things, okay? I want you to consider what needs to happen along the way. Now you can mark these, Q4, Q3, Q2, Q1. Then you can break down the quarters into months and months into weeks and daily habits. We've got a tool that we give all of our members. It's called the King Scroll that helps them do this. It just page by page by page helps them walk through the entire year. But you're going to think about those things that you wrote down. And I want you to say, in order for this to be true, what needs to happen, right? So there has to be an indicator. You're going to know that you're on track to hit that in December if blank, right? If X. I want you to write that down and do that for all of the categories that you wrote down for what you want to be true and what will be true December of 2025. And then I want you to do that a couple more times, right? Think about maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 indicators along the way. Maybe not for every single category, it may not be applicable, but for example, if I'm going to, well, I'll tell you, I'll use my construction company as an example. So we just wrapped up our second year. We'll do just a little over 2 million in revenue. And next year we are projecting for 5 million. Now that's more than double. But in order for that to be true, what has to happen is a couple things. Is one, we're acquiring another company, right? I already know the revenue of that company. And then the things need to happen inside of that company and then this company in order for the year to be panned out. So I can break down number of leads that we need in order for that to be true. I can break down number of contracts that need to be sold in order for that to be true. I can break down how many new employees that we need to hire and specific roles in order for that to be true. And I can reverse engineer these back all the way throughout the year of 2025. And then I can sit down with that team and we can go, okay, great. So in January, here's when the acquisition happens. Here's our plan to bring on these 3 projects. We're going to do this around marketing to generate this amount of leads. Over on this side, we're going to do X, Y, Z. That's going to happen in Q2. And when that happens, then this is going to happen. And then that's going to happen in Q3. And I can project out the year, right? And I just did it forward motion. But what I just taught you to do from a reverse engineer process is to start from the end, right? Start from the 5 million and then reverse engineer all the way back to January where we are right now. Okay. And you can do this for every single category. Jake, you want to add some color here?
No, I was just going to say, I was walking through this process this morning with one of our members, and it blew their mind because most people don't approach problem solving this way. Now, we were specifically talking about a revenue target that this person wanted inside of their business in the new year. And they felt like the revenue target was really daunting. That's a big number. I don't know if I can get that. And by reverse engineering the process, really what we learned is they need to increase their lead flow by 80 leads a month. And if they can increase by 80 leads a month, they know that they'll close 50% of those, which is an additional 40 jobs at their average job cost. And now they're at their revenue target. And he's like, oh my gosh, I was so worried about making this number. I just got to go get 80 leads. I can do that. That's easy.
Yep. Yeah. And what happened in that moment that you deposited in him was belief. He already knew the number. Now, he may not have been able to articulate it because it was convoluted in this big target, right? This, oh my gosh, this daunting thing. Chaz, how are you going to go from 2 million to 5 million? Well, actually, it's going to be rather easy, and I'll tell you exactly how we're going to do it. Now, if I just told you, well, we're going to shoot for it, it's probably not going to happen, right?
Yeah, I think the belief thing there is really important because what happens is we set these big, we call them BHAGs, right? Big, hairy, audacious goals. We set these BHAGs for ourselves and then we miss them because there's no plan. Like we throw out this ridiculous number. We throw out this ridiculous goal. And then because we don't hit it, we're like, oh man, that hurt. And I feel like I got egg on my face. I embarrassed myself. So I'm not going to set these big goals moving forward. I think over time, as we age, as adults, that's why people stop planning. That's why people stop setting goals.
For sure.
Because they've let themselves down too many times that they don't want to plant their flag in the ground and say, I'm stinking doing something this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I get that feeling, I said I was going to do this and I didn't, and some of that, you kind of got to go back to when the goal was set, kind of like what we were just talking about right now. If you remember just a few minutes ago, probably 10 minutes ago here in the show, I said that, okay, so you have these, these targets for 2025. Now, is that a real 12-month target or were you thinking of the 3-year picture? Right. So a lot of times, that BHAG potentially is the 3-year picture. And it doesn't mean that we don't hold on to it. It doesn't mean that you have it. You can have a kind of like, oh my gosh, if everything goes perfect, this is where we're going to be type of goal. And I think that we should have that because it's going to make us stretch. It's going to make us reach, but then you've also got to be like, okay, well, so most likely what's going to happen is something like this. And, there's, we might get some criticism on, like that's lowering the target or whatever, but I just think there's prudence in what you're talking about right there. That person that feels the egg on the face or last year I said this and I didn't even come close. Well, it's probably because you didn't set a proper target. You can't just make up some number and then like try your hardest. So I'm all about setting a number that scares you. Makes your, sphincter pucker a little bit.
Let me tell you, I don't know if you remember this, but I'm going to tell you this story. I'm going to remind you of this story. The very first annual planning meeting that we had for Gathering the Kings, we were setting 5-year targets. And one of the team members in the room started crying because she was so uncomfortable with the number that we were setting. She didn't understand how we could get there. She didn't think it was realistic. Yeah. And she just had this little mini emotional breakdown in that moment because it scared her. And I think it's okay to be in an environment where you're scared. Right?
Yeah.
That's part of growth.
Yeah. Yeah. If you never stretch it, you never get scared, then you'll always just be the same, I guess, in my opinion. Yeah. I think that there's a delicate balance here. You want to set the target out far enough, right? But then you also have to understand like the indicators along the way, right? And so in order for that to be true, what has to happen? And if you just do that all the way back to today, now you got your roadmap. And now you can ask yourself, does this actually make sense? Right? Does it make sense that I can double the business this year? Or does it make sense that I can, send my wife flowers every Friday? This was something I brought up the other day on the call, but this was a real target that I had. This was back in 2020. I think what it was. Year of COVID, I think no, it was 21. It was the year after. And I wanted to show some appreciation to Julie. And so I set up this auto shipment. Called the local flower shop every Friday. And what I didn't think about was, after 4, 5, 6 weeks of this, like there would still be multiple bouquets on the counter. And you would think like that would be like the shock factor, the awe factor, like, wow, boom. Well, for her, it got really annoying because then there were just flowers everywhere. And it was like, okay, that kind of backfired. Not that she was unappreciative, by no means. Don't hear me wrong. Julie was, shocked and loved every moment of it. But, after about 5 or 6 weeks of roses showing up on Friday or flowers, it was, it had worn off. It wasn't new anymore. It wasn't thoughtful anymore. It wasn't intentional anymore. It was on autopilot. And so what I hadn't done is I hadn't thought about like, is this even a realistic target? Like, does it really make sense to send 52 bouquets of flowers this year? No, I just set some random target and I went after it. Okay, fine. So I adjusted and I pivoted along the way. But this is a good example, is what I'm trying to say, of if we set up a wrong target, either we don't hit it, and then we either are going to feel bad about it, or we need to adjust along the way. And that's the healthy approach, is go, 5 or 6 weeks in, I was like, okay, great. I have to find a different way to be able to show, Julie, that I appreciate her. I have to be more intentional. Can't be that easy.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me as someone, I don't know where I learned it, but I've always been a goal setter. I've always been a planner. We do a lot of stuff with the predictive index. It's a personality profiling for the listener who's not ever heard us talk about it. One of my characteristics or one of my traits is, I like things to be in order. I like them to have their own special place. I like to have a plan. I don't like to move forward if there's not a real well thought out plan. So I've always been a planner in my life. And it's interesting to me that there are people that fly by the seat of their pants and don't have a plan and just show up and do the things.
Yeah.
Because that is just not the way that I'm wired.
Right.
And so as we have like gotten into talking about annual planning more with people, to see light bulbs go off in their brains when they realize like, oh, I can reverse engineer everything in my life and break this down.
Yeah. It's powerful.
And so we've zoomed out. We've looked at our neighborhood. We're in the clouds. We've set those targets of where we want to be in December of 2025. We've set some benchmarks up along the way, quarters throughout the year. We now need to talk to our team, tell our family, get other people involved, and then we need to start implementing things.
Yep.
And so you mentioned before, if you don't have community, you need people around you.
Okay.
It's easy to be chasing a goal when you're around other people who are chasing goals.
Yep.
But talk to the importance about publicizing this, talking to someone about this, having an accountability partner.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first off, you said something really, really powerful. You said to share it with your family, and specifically your wife, your husband, your kids. Sit down as a family and show them what that means for them. That's exciting because then they hold on to that. I used to teach sales people a long, long time ago that they should tell their sales targets to their kids and ask their kids to ask them. So, daddy walks in the door, "Daddy, did you get a sale today?" Which is exactly what my kids would say. And man, if I didn't, it would be like, yeah, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah.
I don't want to let my kids down. So use that power. It's powerful. And then to your point around the community, and even making it public, because you said two things there. Community is great. If you need one of those, we talked about that. Go to gatheringthekings.com, fill out an application there. But having people that are like-minded, like you, that want growth, that are family oriented, that are down to earth, that want to win in all areas. Having those types of people around you regularly. We host different types of calls throughout the week and month and quarter, a couple of events every single year. Just that sheer fact alone, not even considering what you're going to learn, not even considering what you're going to experience or how you're going to think different or whatever, because all those things are going to happen too. Not going to experience any of the results that you're going to get from, just being a better person or a better business owner or having a better business. I'm talking about just the simple fact of being in a room where there's other people that operate at an energy level that is, and when there's a bunch of them in the same room, it doesn't feel like anything else you've ever experienced. Okay. The public thing is interesting because that can be done in a group. That can be done with your family. Just 15 minutes ago here on this podcast, what did I say I gave up not that long ago? Caffeine. So I reiterated to the public. I don't know how many thousands of people are going to hear me say that. But guess what? Would be weird, Jake, is if someone heard me say on this podcast that I gave up caffeine and that I quote unquote made a decision and it's just behind me and I don't waffle with it. And to see me at fill in the blank, drinking a Red Bull. Wouldn't that be weird? So, it's pretty interesting. My brain knows that. And so what I do to myself constantly is put myself on blast like I just did. Because one, I'm a man of integrity. Not necessarily saying that I'm saying this because of integrity. I said it because I know that now I've got to act on it. I'm already acting on it, but I want to continue to act on it. And so you, the listener, you'll never catch me. You'll never catch me anywhere with a sugary thing in my hand because you've heard me say, I've decided that doesn't serve me and I've moved on from it. And then that's it. It's like, oh, is he going to be a man of his word? Is he going to do what he says he's going to do? Well, it's one of the top things that I value in this world. And so I say things like this publicly because guess what I just did? Makes it really, really hard to be a man of integrity when you say things and then don't do them.
Yeah, I think most people are just fine with not living in integrity because of that, Chaz.
Exactly. And that's a different problem, right? But
100%.
For the ones listening that are a woman of integrity or that are a man of integrity or a business or a business owner or a parent of integrity, if that's actually what that means, is that what that means is that you do what you say you're going to do. And none of us are perfect. Don't get me wrong. None of us are perfect. It's not about being perfect. But to the best of my ability, to the best of my conscious awareness, you're going to see me making good choices based on the things that I've said that I want. Because that's the only way I'm going to get what I want.
So we've written down our goals, and like you quoted at the beginning of the podcast, only 3% of people who set goals write the goals down. So please, listener, be in the top 3%. Write these goals down. Writing them down doesn't mean that they're going to come true, though. So you have to do something with them now that you've written them down.
Yeah.
And for us, that's a practice of visualization. That may be a practice of having them posted on the mirror so you can see it every single day when you're brushing your teeth. It can be part of your team meetings where you remind everyone what the company goals are for the year. So you're solidifying the base around what you're trying to accomplish. Making them public, we're getting some accountability, we're getting in community, letting people know what those goals are, and then we're tactically putting a plan in place. What we know is you can go faster alone, but you can go farther together. And so how can you bring in people, resources to help you accomplish the things that you want to accomplish? One of the big things for me was with my fitness goals, I knew that I had to have a coach. I had to go get a coach in order to help me on my fitness goals. I already have community. I already have people winning, but I needed specialized knowledge that I didn't have, that I went and found in order to help me with my goal.
Yeah, that's cool.
That may look like investing in a coach like I have. It may look like learning a new skill. It may look like finding a friend who has that skill. Side note, it's why I'll never own a pickup truck again.
You got too many skills.
Because when you're the guy with the pickup truck, you have to help move everything.
Yeah. I had the first circumstance happen just a couple months ago. I told myself that the next person that asked me to move, depending upon who they were, of course. I mean, it depending on who they were just going to get a no, But depending upon who they were, if I liked them, loved them, really wanted to help them, but didn't want to give them my time, it ended up being my mom. She asked me to help her move, and I was like, that's not the greatest leverage for me right now. But if you will tell me how much it costs to have a movie company come out and move it, I'd be happy to pay for it or help pay for it, whatever that looks like. And she was like, "Oh no, you don't have to do that." I'm like, "No, it's not. I'm not trying to just throw money at you. What I'm saying is that you're valuable to me, but my time, I'm not willing to use it on this specific thing. I still love you, still want to help you, so I'm happy to use the resource that I have more of." And I think she understood. I ended up paying for some stuff, which was great, and I think that it's a win-win.
That's awesome. There's a lot of cool things with that story. One, that you have figured out what levers are valuable for you, and two, that you've built a life with resources that you can help the people that you love the most in that area. So kudos for that.
Yeah, appreciate it, man.
As we're wrapping up this conversation about annual planning, what's the last thing that you want the listener to take with them before we end this recording?
Yeah, I would say to finish out the example here. So finish writing down what you want to be true in 2025 for every area. Complete the indicators along the way. And then you're going to, like Jake said, put that in some sort of a written document that you can, ideally you would read it out loud. Maybe you write it every single day if it's not too long, but at least you're going to read it out loud every day. And just make a decision. I didn't say commitment. I said make a decision, right? Because the root word of decide is to cut off. I can't remember the exact root word, but when you make a decision, I'm choosing this one thing and nothing else. Okay, so I'm cutting off all of the other options when I make a decision. So I want you to make a decision to read these out loud every single day and to believe that they're yours, that they already are. And that might feel a little bit, funny at first, but just to spend time reading them and imagining them in your mind already to be, and decide to do that for a year. And at the end of 2025, you can write me and tell me you're an idiot and this doesn't work, and I'd be happy to buy you a cup of coffee, or I'll pay for your move. But that won't happen, because for the people that actually hold to it, you'll see this next year, 2025, become something that you have never even been able to dream of. You'll be able to experience life in a way that you didn't even know was possible. And it starts just with those intentions in the morning of reading that thing out loud. And so what you've just created, it could be the very thing that changes everything. If you take it seriously, and if you make that decision to just go all in every morning, read this out loud, envisioning and feeling as if they already are. And then at the end of 2025, I want to hear your successes. Ideally, maybe you're already part of Gathering the Kings, and we'll get on a call, and I've already known all your wins. But if not, I still want you to reach out to us. And if it didn't work and you actually did it, well, that won't be the case. If you quit along the way and it didn't work, you can give me a call and maybe we can help you reset the targets.
Thank you for listening to Driven to Win. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe: that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.